Come King Cobra. Sata was this enigma of a politician who I think wanted to be president at all costs.
He fought for it.
He fought for it. During the FTJ era, if you recall, we had Katere Kalumba, we had VJ, we had who was Secretary General. But you could see that MMD took a hold when Sata became Secretary General of the party, because then he realized, I can swing this thing. When the third term issue came for FTJ, it was Sata who was really taking the instructions off and executing them. But
and it appears he used the opportunity to knock off his competition.
Of course he did. And that's what I mean by being a tactician at politics, because you realize here's General Mianda, here's Kriston Tembo, here's here's who. They had to go. Bwana, I'm going to hit you from the left flank and I'm going to attack you at the right. But when I cross the ball in the middle, you can't be there. I'm the one who's supposed to be scoring here. And when Zambia shouts, open fire, I should be the one taking the shot. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm Michael Sata. And he played them. Now, some of us watching this movie unfold, we thought to ourselves, okay, here's a guy who's got a long term. He knows from where we stand and where the Oasis Forum stood, this third term is not going to succeed. But he realized, in the event this doesn't succeed, and I've knocked off the others off their perch, I should be the last man standing. Therefore, it will leave FTJ with no option. No option, Bwana. I should be the one to take that penalty. Unfortunately, when FTJ decided, go and wake up Levi Patrick Mwanawas, you remember Sata's first statement. Ejo twikalira pa Munsaka, Musumba wabwati. Walina basenda. Nishna laikalira muno. Na piamo. And that was the birth of the Patriotic Front. Because now the man felt, I have worked, I've been loyal, I've been dedicated to the cause, I've played my cards.
And I've fought his fight.
How could you play me? But he forgot. He was dealing with this political engineer who thought and felt, no, I owed Mwanawasa, more so our background, plus the accident. Let me repay this man. And that is how that came through. So when the PF was formed, initially some of us did not want to, we were torn, because you were advisors to the inner circle legally of the MMD. Now this, and we thought, how do we help this man? And what will happen to MMD? And how is this going to... When I changed, more or less, was when RB came in. Because like I said, RB for me was not ready to be president. And some of the policies and the things we began to hear, especially surrounding his family and the issues of business and whatever happened with his children, it then said, country first. That is when we began now to cross slowly in our minds, later physically, and we joined the Patriotic Front. But we realized also that the MMD had tricks up their sleeves. They wanted to win elections at all costs. So we went and now advised King Cobra, you can't win using these old methods. It won't work. You need to fight these people legally, you need to fight them politically, you also need to fight them strategically. So we went and formed an organization called Anti-Rigging Zambia. And that is what we championed with other NGOs to make sure that that didn't happen. I remember my office, I think, was slowly being turned into a de facto secretariat for the PF. And it didn't sit well with some of the members of the Patriotic Front because they thought Sata was trusting me too much with a lot of information and a lot of responsibility per se. But how did that happen? Sata said, look, I have lost elections. And part of it is I'm always being dribbled the last minute. And some of the dribbles are coming from within. So, Bwalya and Wasebere, Bob Sichinga, lead this group and begin to formulate my next election. Now, we are moving from 2008 to 2011, and we had time. We saw what had happened in 2006. So we said to ourselves, okay, this is 2008. We've learned. This is how we're going to play this game. The first meeting we had was at the agricultural showgrounds. Bob Sichinga, Honorable, my very good uncle, was chairing the meeting. And we had all these academicians and Sata had managed to bring a whole lot of people together. We met, ideas were being thrown. In that meeting, there were two young men who were very, aggressive. This is Mwamba Penny and Mwenyachama. After the meeting, they came up to me and said, when we were at Omelo Momba Road, you remember what Sata said? I said, yes. And he says, we'll never come to this meeting again. Then I said, but why? And he said, if you don't take charge of this meeting, nothing will happen. These are old goonies who are too slow, and this is not how you win an election. These are young men who are eager, and for them it was like life and death. So I said, okay, come to my office tomorrow. We'll sit, discuss, then we'll go and see the old man. They came up with these ideas, and they wanted to see how the 3 NGOs I was controlling could be used for this and that. Eventually, I went and saw the old man, and I said, these old men may not take you where you want to go, but we have this new plan. Then he said, come at 20 hours. I went and saw him in the night. We sat, the two of us, under a chimuticha kotapela, outside his home. Yeah. And then he said, from today, you shall lead the presidential campaign. I'm going to leave the 156 seats now in Takavimba, but you lead the presidential campaign. He planned Mwampela. I think it can work. And that kicked off the campaign for Sata. And all I said to Sata is, I don't want your money. What I want is you give me your name. He says, what do you mean? I said, wherever I shall go, there shall be money. But you have to ratify and validate whatever I'm going to say. So wherever we went campaigning, wherever we went looking for funds, and whoever we spoke to, if they doubted, all I said, this is the number, call him. And when they called, who is there? That's my boy. Just do what he wants. And that's how we were covered. Yeah. Not Ngwe from Sata. The money came from the people we used to go and see, and the politicians and businessmen we wanted to associate with. Eventually we started running and had the campaign running. It didn't sit well with the full structure of the PF, because now we became enemy number one. Why is Sata going to this law firm? Why isn't he coming to the secretariat? And why is this and why is that? Eventually we told him we needed to change you. In other words, image building. This picture you have, this we have to. When we started breaking all that, the structures in PF felt we are taking too much control. But he was very obedient, he was very kind, and he agreed to most of what we did. I remember my good friend Charlie Mubanga, forgive the expression, we used to call him Charlie Sex at the
Yes.
time. Keza Zulu, Chiluanama, myself, and others. He would simply say, if you land of Bwalya. That was all Sata would say. Bwalyanga nalanda nichinacho. And the first pictures we went to take of him, his family, was at a studio called Inzi. Now there's a there's a feeding station there. I don't know what has happened to that place. We took him for photos and things like that, and we changed his image and things and stuff. And then we started the branding of motor vehicles, campaign photos and things and stuff. The momentum was growing, but he did most of the work. I must commend him. He was on radio, community radios. He was out there. He was hammering the MMD, and eventually, come 2011, fast forward, Sata won the elections. But the funny thing is, when he won those elections, we were doing a PVT as anti-rigging. And we had the monitors trained, the agents trained and everything. When we did our numbers, around 2030, myself, Honorable Bob Sechinga, State Council Mumbakapumpa, went to Omelo Mumba Road. And I said, congratulations, our President. We found him sitting under the same caterpillar tree behind his house. Avena security nava shalabari kunumuk. If I have won, what are you doing here? Why are you not at Mulungushi? And I said, no, but from what we've done and our figures, namuwina, but it has to be announced officially. I want to see you at Mulungushi, Bwalya. Otherwise, I don't believe. So we went to Mulungushi. And lo and behold, around midnight or slightly before, the then Chief Justice Irene Mambirima, the late, may her soul rest in peace, came in and said, there are few constituencies remaining, but even with those, even if we gave them to Arabi, there will be no way of catching up. So we're going to declare. And the results were declared. Before they could declare the results, my phone rang. Who's calling? Amdala. Olikwisa. Na tumwacheba tinjise kumulungushi. Now, our police rights are a special branch. I don't want them here. You come back here. So I said, but how do I get there before we hear the final announcement here? I said, come back. So I told Vasichinga, Nava Mumba Kapumba, I said, I said, no, but we've got to hear this. He says, well, the man says the state has already moved. So he knows the results now. Vamwamba moving, Vasichinga, Vamumba Kapumpa and myself, moving from Mulungushi to Vasata's home at Omelo Mumba took us 1 hour and a half. There were people like this on the streets. We were driving at 10 kilometers an hour. We took a long route. Before we could reach Omelo Mumba Road, the road was blocked. We had to go and park at St. Ignatius Church and then walk to his home, meander through the people until we got to the gate. Then we told the police, OP or whoever was there, no, the President wanted for no. Who are you? By that time, state had
there is no structure.
Now it's like we don't know you. So eventually I called Mukati. And then Vamaivana Kaseva came and said, no, Awatatatu Kutivainge. So that's how we got in. And from there, this is now after 010 towards 02. He starts giving instructions. I want you to go tomorrow. Go and see Kanganja,
who was Secretary to Cabinet.
Secretary to Cabinet. Go and get government. You Bwalya. So I'm like, how? Who am I in the structure? I said, you go and get government. And what you do are the following. Celebration parliament. Take on there.
The inauguration was set for
want to go to Supreme Court. I think he had 5 conditions. And he was telling us. So I'm looking at Bob Sitching and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm looking at Mumba Kapumpa and they are saying, now Mvofu go and sleep because by 7 hours you must be at cabinet. True to form, By 7:30 we were at cabinet, and we saw Winter, State Council, Secretary General of the party then, and Guy Scott, and the rest coming in. But we had already arrived. And Wakanganja came, and Fube, remember he was my lecturer from campus?
Yeah.
Are you the one I've received phone calls for? I said, yes. All right, they need your team to the conference room. So we went to conference room and the discussions were held, and fast forward, PF is in government. Now, what was good about Sata? I'm saying this and I've gone into detail because that's how close we were.
Yeah.
And we learned a lot from this man, because this is one person, because of his longevity in politics, he was ready to be president.
He was ready.
He was ready. He had a blueprint, he had a plan, he had a vision, he knew what he wanted to do for this country. The one thing I learned from Sata over the time that we were together was you needed to know your country. He would give you details about who you're going to meet, where you're going to meet him, the color of the house he lives in, and his phone number. It became so funny that if he says, you would travel 2 kilometers off the road, call this number, so exactly what he would tell you, that's what you find. The man knew his people, he knew his country, he knew exactly what he wanted to do for the country. And that is why when it came to the infrastructure, which we also in Zambia must prosper trying to follow in terms of our manifesto, is we agreed that there is no way a country can develop without infrastructure. If your infrastructure is not competing at global, international level, there is no way you're going to attract investment, no matter how good your policies are. Because when the investors come, if they cannot pick up a phone and call, the network is bad, their driving mobility is not there, they'll tell you, this country, we can't. Phone towers. And so he knew. So Sata was ready. And when he began to execute his policy, the one thing I learned from Sata was he didn't care much about procedure. When he was president, what he wanted, he wanted.
Yeah, bureaucracy frustrated him.
And he said, if you're going to be waiting for these technocrats, they will first tell you they want a seminar, they want a workshop to discuss. Just tell them what you want. It must be done. It came to a point where we began now to relate to government officials in a manner that this is the kind of president you're dealing with. When he wants something done, do it. I think, credit to him, even at the Memorial Park where we bury our presidents, those mausoleums that are built there, he wanted things done. He was always shouting at Yamfa Mukanga, who was infrastructure minister at the time. Why is it that this is not repaired? Why is this not done? Why is this? If I come here in 3 months and it's not done, I'll fire you. I think on one visit, he went to the Copper Belt, and the presidential guest house was in a mess. And says, but next time I come here, if I find it like this, you're fired. So you could see that to him, budgets didn't matter. You had to maintain a certain standard of things. And if you had to shortchange and move a budget to fit into what he wanted, it went for the road infrastructure. So when he went and said, link Zambia 8,000, he knew what he wanted. He knew the kind of roads he wanted. He knew who was going to do what. This is a president who knew that opening up a country means goods and services will be moved faster. And it also meant that the people will get their produce to the markets faster. You don't teach that. That you learn from practice. But he also knew Pamishi apa bemfumu. Sean Semuno Zambia, he could tell you. And if you say, no, tulefo kuyoko, and he would tell you in advance, and whether you're in Western province, he knew the country
and they knew the people.
I think for any leader vying to be a president of this country, you must know your people. Basata knew his people. Credit to him. He had a vision. He knew what he wanted to do for his people, and he knew how to execute it. The downside, Muri Basata, was because he knew what he wanted, he started taking shortcuts. So some people would say he was abrogating government procedures, he was abrogating government protocol, and you remember, I think on two occasions he embarrassed the then RDA chairperson, Bawili Nsanda. There was a road, Kumikango.
Yeah.
I think he went to inspect and they hadn't moved in the manner he wanted. There was a shout down there. Then there was the Matumbo Road, Chama Matumbo. They went and then they had bulldozers. They wanted him to ride the bulldozer. He says, if you've taken money from these Chinese, I'm not getting on your bulldozer. He went to commission
They come to Western Province as PS.
You were PS, you knew him. So if things didn't seem right, he would just, but he was not diplomatic. PS, party official, if he sensed there's something wrong, he would embarrass you right then and walk away. So that didn't sit well with some officials. It didn't sit well with some of the civil servants, technocrats, and the other thing that I found was also on the downside was he, maybe because of his experience, he was a very brutal man. But is that the right word? Maybe brutal is too big. He was a very blunt man, and he didn't care what it meant.
Yeah,
so he said it. And whether he's on the podium, whether it's on a press conference, you saw in his appointments, Basata would appoint you in the morning. If a security breach or report is received by evening, you'll be fired. And he didn't mind whether you were on the road to take up your post, your arrival advice slip was with you. He didn't mind because to him, walanse banya. And yeah, economically, to get the infrastructure moving, maybe again, with due respect, he wasn't very academically gifted, but he had a lot of experience. He didn't look into the details, the finer details of things. And that is how come some people took advantage and figures were inflated, blotted, and we got into a debt situation which we shouldn't have been in. I think for Basata, that's what I can say.
Okay. You didn't make it into cabinet with Basata. And that surprised many people, especially the elaborate explanation you've given and the insights and how much he trusted you with responsibility. Would you share some light?
It was an agreement. We had agreed that we would join him in 2016.
Okay.
And we had formed a core group which he wanted to transcend and move with in 2016. I think you remember some of the headlines where he began to say, my MPs are useless. And this, he was preparing ground because he knew that he had to change the team at a certain time. Lo and behold, 2014,
he died. The
man is gone.
Did you know he was unwell?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Me and his Vasevele, Bob Sichinga, Honorable, we knew. And I think on one or two occasions he confided that he wasn't feeling too well. But he made us feel it was not serious. And
it's something you would overcome.
Yeah. However, when I saw that it was serious, was just before he fired or dropped Winter Kavimba, Secretary General. He summoned us to a meeting. Now this meeting was the last meeting I had with Basata. He summoned us to a meeting at State House, me and my accomplices, so to speak. This is a time where he said, "Ndefo kutamfya winter." And the plan is, you people must do this and help me, give me reasons why I should get rid of winter. I said, "But you're the president, just fire him." He says, no, I've got to have the political reasons. I mean, you should create the reasons. So we came up with a team of Richard Chandanyela, Julius Komaki, Mwenya Chama, Ben Siwila, yeah, and kwali mulumendo na mumwishi bachanda mumwitati die hard. Those were part of the boys in the team. My office was a planning office. The execution of whatever we planned was being done at Davis Chama's Avon Lodge. So whatever we planned, the press briefing to denounce the Secretary General was at Avon. I wanted to stay away from it because I didn't want friction and things like that. Eventually, when the plan was being executed, tension now began.
Why did you want to fire his SGM?
Intelligence reports. And things I can't go into now, but things he had confided in some of us.
Because at that time, of course, the country didn't know that they could be unwell. There were two camps that had emerged. On one side, GBM, Edgar Lungu. On the other side, Winter, and the so-called cartel. So the party was riven in two. Is that the period you're talking about?
Exactly. I didn't want to go into that, but now that you brought it up.
No, because that then leads us to what happens in 2014.
Exactly, because
President
Sata got intelligence reports, and he said, okay, now this is the Secretary General, a man I have trusted. How can he be having these dark corner meetings and stuff like that? So it became an issue of how do I get rid of him without it looking bad. So when the execution of this plan began, then he had a reason that the waters had been muddled and it was no longer clean water, and I can't see the Secretary General working with me. We gave him the reason. But this meeting I'm talking about, we were summoned. A phone call came through very early in the morning at my office, and all I heard was, "Itaba Ichebove, Mwisekun." Before I could even put the phone down, there were 3 motor vehicles from State House. So I summoned the boys to come. They came to my office, and I said, "Twala Mikonka, I'll drive the boys." When we got there, he said, "There's somebody missing. Where's the Chama?" Davis Chama. So by that time, Davis Chama was around Chilenje area. We called him. He was also brought into the meeting. So me and Davis sat together. The boys were standing. In that meeting, we found Kambwili, Honorable Willie Nsanda, Winter Kabimba, Honorable Secretary General, and I think Justice Minister at the time. We found Wamayowa Inonge Wina, Honorable, and we also found, I forget the last person, Guy Scott, Vice President. So when we got in, he started querying, "Why are you insulting the Secretary General?" Now, I found that very tricky because, hang on, you're the guy giving instructions. Now you're putting us on the spot. And what do you want us to do? So, Komaki, Julius, Kaila was very annoyed. He found the question a bit, then he looked at me as if to say, "But mwatwewele ati mdala
ni assignment
ya you understand?" So I winked at him because I didn't.
Oh, so you were summoned to be reprimanded.
Yes.
So that you are loyal to the SG.
Correct.
Yet your daily instructions to undermine the SG. Ah, okay.
So we got there.
Sata at his best.
At his best. So me, I realized I can't speak because I was the one engaging this man.
Yeah.
So eventually, Kaila says, Ababa SGU Nwaba. You can't trust him. So he came out now with the reasons why and why they were doing what they were doing and things. So me, I'm watching. Davis Chama is sitting next to me.
Yeah.
Then it became a tit for tat between the president and Julius Komaki, Richard Nyela, Benson Suwira, and Mwinya Chama.
Oh, the president
on
interrupted
president. And then so I said, boys, you're speaking to the president. Mama Inongewina, Guy Scott, they're all watching this. It was a spectacle now. In the top room at State House, that office, the Oval one.
Yeah.
So me, I said, Munote Mwakuland, let me watch. So after the exchanges and tempers and everything calmed down, so he gave instructions. From now onwards, I want a united party. Get out. So the boys refused to move. Because they were saying, why are you embarrassing us?
Yeah.
And you know, that tension. So I stood up and I said, Mr. President, forgive me. Kaila, Fumeni Nabanen. So the boys looked at me and I said, Fumen. So the president was now looking. The boys started going. So he says, Imanin. Na miewa na Fumeni Morfes Mwakana, Bwalya Mwaumfu. Finish village tikapano. You know, he was still playing the game.
Yeah.
So I said, but President Papa, it's okay. I'll deal with the boys. So get out. Yeah. So Afumava Lumendo, they went to the car park because they had come with me, stood near my car. So to Ashalapadia, he gave a dress down also to the officials. No, be kind. These cadres, we need them and what and stuff like that. Then he says, all of you, get out. You've got work to do, your ministers. And in fact, now it came
so,
from
or
him.
maybe Winter and the group had reported you to the president.
Yes, they had. It was very obvious. They had.
Okay,
they had.
Okay.
Now, as I was standing up to leave, he says, the rest of you can go. So Davis Chama, you can also go. So Davis says, well, President, Nachafu Kulomba. Yes, but Davis, finish Mulefwa. In Nachafu Kulomba, in Biktumam Bosham Central Committee and things. What value are you going to add to the Central Committee? Now to get out. So you know that bluntness.
Yeah.
So that's how Davis left. When everybody left, now there's 3 people. Now what I'm going to say, I wish Bawiri Nsanda was alive. But President, Bawiri Nsanda, myself. And then he says, and I could see from his demeanor, the man had gone a bit frail. He had changed. He's not the Sata we knew. I knew the man is sick. His voice was the same authority, but appearance, I knew there's something wrong with the president. Then he says to me, Kalen Punch. I was at a distance because the ministers were in front. There was some furniture behind. So he says, Sen Kuno. So I sat here, Bawiri Nsanda, and he sat here. Then he picked up the phone to call the gate. And his question was, and everybody, whoever answered there says, I think all over left or something. Okay, give it 5 minutes. Puts the phone down. Then he says, Winter and Now, I'm like, hello? We've just had this dress down, but he's going back to his original plan. He says, Winter and Now, I need us to agree, Secretary General Ninan. I said, it's your call, you're the president. The Constitution says that I know. You know I love a Secretary General.
He offered it to you.
Me. And I said, no. Then he turns Kulibansand. So I said, well, President, can I explain? I said, Wawiri Nsanda ave Keriab. Bakuchinside. He's from Muchinga. Inendu Wakuchinside. From Muchinga. Mwayaikala pamupika. by way of convenience, but you're from Chinsali. That I know. So once a Fwebekele pano tuliwe na Chinsali, mumuchinga. So how will it sit out there that you are a president of a political party? Your Secretary General is also from Chinsali and from Muchinga. For a moment, he took it. And he says, okay. So who do you propose? And I said, no. That's your prerogative. It's your discretion. It's your decision. Wawili, no, President, we can take some time and think about it. Long story short, that is how come ECO became the
Secretary General after Winter was fired.
Because he took a decision himself.
Now, Honorable Winter Kawimba was here where you are seated, and he somehow touched that matter, and he appears to have stated that he actually doubts if his dismissal even took place. He assumes it was a decision of other people. He even doubts if the letter came from President Michael Sata, the dismissal for him as Justice Minister and the withdrawal of his nomination as and he says he's putting it in a book. I said, as soon as it is in the book, come, we reflect on it. But you are telling us that you had heard the president speak to this matter 2-3 times before it even happened. Okay.
That is how come we were given the instructions Gutampa akawawawa against Winter. We just didn't start.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to my big brother Winter. He may not have known in the background what was happening. But these instructions directly came from the president. And that's what he wanted. He wanted a reason to fire Winter. I don't know what intelligence, but he told me, I have intelligence reports on Winter. And I can't trust him. He can no longer be my Secretary General. Himself. And we were not doing what we were doing at my office or at Avon without the blessing of State House. No, we did not. But this is the catch. When that discussion is finished between me, the president, and Wawili Nsanda, he lifts the phone again and calls the gate. And they say, Winter has driven off. They confirm. Then he says, the same people he had chased.
Yeah, and
reprimanded. So I ran downstairs, went out, and I found Kaila, Julius Komaki, Richard Nyela, and the rest of the crew, Mwenyachama, Benji, and everyone. I said, Valim President. The boys were upset. They didn't want to go back. I said, President, Valim fire.
Yeah.
Valim to shout. I said, Valim fire. So we trooped up again.
Yeah.
Trust me, the atmosphere was so different when we arrived back. All he did was he pulled out an envelope, put it on the table, and said, job well done.
Yeah.
Now go and continue. And I'm like, who does this?
Machiavellian.
You know what I'm saying? So for me, whatever Winter is saying, he didn't know what was at play.
Sincerely so.
Sincerely so. And I feel sorry for him. And for me, it was nothing personal. It was just that these were presidential directives.
Yeah.
And we had to play. And whatever I am saying, the names I have mentioned here, if they remember that meeting, even when I'm not there,
they will say the same fact.
The only thing I would have loved was for Nsanda to have been alive. At least he would have vouched. And he would have said, yes, that was discussed. Because
no. The goodness with all these issues is the various facets. So you might have one side of the story. You might need other from the same event.
Correct.
For example, there's Doris Leah's book I was just seeing today, where Dixon Jerry says he has a perspective on what Dora was saying, about a matter. There are same matters, same event, same meeting, but you all have different experiences to the facts.
Right.
Because some facts you don't have the background, like you have put in this case, where you were called, probably Winter could have complained against you that you were undermining. You were summoned and you were ballocked in front of the president. But they were unaware that your activities
the Cobra was playing. The Cobra was playing. And he played him very well.
Oh, yeah.
So by the time Winter was being fired and dropped, he didn't know what had hit him.
Yeah.
Because to him, the meeting he saw was the president that protected him.
Yeah.
Little did he know that when he left, the boys and I were somewhere
even
back,
rewarded.
and we were rewarded, and we were told more fire.
Yeah,
So for
yeah.
me, it was like, okay, these are politics.
No. You know, if you look at the profile of President Michael Sata, that is clear. President Michael Sata,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
he understood the politics. He was very well experienced, and he knew.
Yes.
You know, like you were talking about Chiluba and being a political engineer. They all had these
Tricks up their
mastery.
sleeve.
Yes.